Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Built to Grow. And really excited because I have a special guest today that is kicking off a series for us on AI application to food and agribusinesses. We're going to be diving in on AI application as a whole for businesses, but also very applicable to accounting and finance functions too. And so super excited to have Ryan here today. Ryan is an AI expert, helps a lot of companies with figuring out how do you actually deploy AI at an enterprise level, that not just you got your little sales guy over there that's figuring out how to write, new sales messages for outbound, messaging in Claude or something of the sort, but actual enterprise, like high ROI activity. So Ryan's an expert in that. Ryan, do you mind giving a little background about yourself and sharing a little bit about yourself with the audience?
Mhm. Absolutely. My name is Ryan Seifert. I help run Terek Technology. We help companies figure out and understand AI. So if you're a company owner, you say, I want to use AI, and you're like, not real sure where or how to start, that's who we help. We will help you identify where in your business processes to plug the pieces in. We help demystify AI. It's a tool, it's not a magic wand, and you kind of have to use it as such. And then we'll help you prepare all of your data and your environment so you can actually implement the AI smoothly. And we will, of course, help you implement the AI. Yeah.
It's so important because I think like I think one of the big use cases that you and I have talked about, Ryan, is um, the reality of AI's ability to automate a lot of manual tasks. And the problem for a lot of food and ag businesses is they are housing so much data all over the place because of how much compliance in delivering a fresh food product to consumers actually requires. That I think people can underestimate that, really what's required in terms of food safety laws, in terms of understanding what's happening in your crops, of monitoring your crops, of all the data going through the packing house, like just how much data flow and workflows there are to get a a bunch of grapes from the vineyard, from the vineyard through the packing house all the way into somebody's hands. And so there's so much manual activity in those workflows throughout there, and I'm excited to explore, like, where can AI fit in some of that. But first, AI can be controversial today because people are thinking to themselves, hey, like, AI is going to take away jobs. Like, I'm really afraid my team's perception of AI, that, you know, am I just going to have to replace these team members, et cetera, et cetera. I know you have a different perspective of this. So, like, walk us through, is AI really going to be taking over, human jobs? Is it going to be displacing people anytime really soon?
And I think AI, it's a tool, it's not a magic wand. And it's not going to come in and clear out your team and do everything for your company. We've seen examples of that where Anthropic has turned on AI to help run a vending machine and it just lost a bunch of money. So there's still pieces where it's a tool that'll help people streamline, but you need that person to review the output before it goes forward. There's an accountability piece, there is a verification piece that a person still has to be in there just because of how AI works. And I don't think that goes away anytime soon.
I can just think of examples of this, right? That uh, like I used Claude the other day to build some type of financial model from scratch, just like come up with a new scenario for me, considering all of this in regards to, okay, if I were to develop a comp plan for a team member that I want to bring on the team, and we were to start with sales of this, and I were to incentivize them under all these different scenarios as to what can exist for different packages they sold, that this is what I would want to construct. And I gave that to Claude, thought that I gave it a good prompt, several if then type of required formulas, and it did not pull it off. It was a black box design of what it came out. I spent an hour trying to tell it, nah, I really don't like this, reformat this. And then it finally came to the point, I might as well just build this myself because it's not doing what I need it to do. And so, yeah, it still has many challenges. What are your suggestions? Because I know AI can be used in certain parts of workflow, but like, what's the expectation for human intervention? Like, where's the line as to, just a human should just do this, or AI should be used, but humans definitely need to check this? What's the right kind of mix or combo there? What would you suggest?
I love this question, and I like how you put it, because the answer is we for us when we're coming in to look at opportunities for AI, we look at areas that are low complexity decision making, but often done. And so the low complexity decision making is always a little ambiguous as to what it actually means. And my favorite rule of thumb is if I can make that call while I'm kind of doing something else and it doesn't take my full mental capacity and I have most of the information there kind of at my fingertips to do it quickly, that's usually a really good candidate for it. And as you dive into your processes and workflows, there's a lot more of those than I think people realize. And so that's where we start to identify, okay, here's a decision and a step and an action someone's having to take 15, 20 times a day. And it does take some cognitive ability. They are thinking about it, but it's not that hard. Like they can do it, they can do this while they're taking a call. If they get interrupted with it, they're not starting from square one again. They're not producing a full financial model. It's a small step, and then they can actually you can automate that pretty quickly.
I think to myself, so maybe let's walk through a live case scenario because I remember, we were working with one client and they had limited space in their packing house to store a bunch of packing materials, had limited space. So they would need, they couldn't just like order all their materials at the beginning of like a 3 to 4 month stone fruit season. They were going to need to do intermediate ordering. But they wanted to give their material vendor a plan for, hey, generally this is what we expect in terms of how things could flow. We're going to need these types of boxes at this time. We're going to need these types of things at this time because these are the programs that regularly we sell. And their best case scenario of that to show what would happen is they would actually create a week by week view in Excel of, hey, these commodities this week got packed into these items, these commodities. And so they basically maintained this giant Excel database as to this is what's packed and this is what's happening. So you could see it week by week how it would flow through, and they can hand that to material vendor and say, around this week, we're going to need more of this. I know that that's a pretty hyper example, but like it was literally somebody downloading a PDF from the ERP report and manually entering it into the Excel. And every week and day, they would have to do some element of this. I got to imagine like that task, like AI may not be able to create the Excel model perfectly by itself. It could probably help in it, but like the task of updating that manually, that's probably a good fit for AI and what you're saying, right?
Absolutely. I mean, a good fit for to go be able to pull whether it's getting that data directly, but to populate it into and the Excel spreadsheet being here's a spot that it's saying whether or not you need more of that inventory, right? So there is enough logic in there for it to make the call. Is way I'm understanding the example. So can AI pull that information, pop it in the spreadsheet? Absolutely. Can it then check the spreadsheet and say, hey, okay, we're going to need more? And is it just on the bubble of more, or is it more now? And then can it actually go probably ping the vendor and say, "Hey, we're gonna need more of this. Here's your date." Probably do that too. All of those are low complexity. They're important. They take time from someone, but you can automate that.
You mentioned the logic piece in there, like you begged the question about the logic. So, because we've talked about this, and I had to learn this for myself because, um, I mean, right, we're a CFO practice, and so it's one thing to have data. Um, AI is an LLM, language learning model, and so we talked about an instance in which it could take data and populate something that had built-in logic in it. What's the risk of AI doing mathematical logic? Walk us through that.
I have so many thoughts around this one. I gotta geek out and be a little stodgy.
Please do. Yep.
Large language model. So
Yep.
there's yeah,
Language.
large language
Language.
model. Yeah. Um, but it's just the way the tech works. Ultimately, LLMs, large language models, are just looking at what's the next word in this sequence that's probably most likely to be right. And that is the tool. And we get a lot of use out of that tool. It's really cool. And it's been very effective. Is it good for math? I mean, its training data is going to have a lot of instances where 1 + 1 = 2. There might be a few in there where 1 + 1 = 8. And it can end up running down that path periodically. It's all a probability. So for language, it works well. For math, it does not. Um, and to hit the logic piece in the spreadsheet, yes, it can run through that. It can move the data around, but actually getting a detailed description, a mathematical description on the logic is difficult. So you can try to vibe code it. You can take many different approaches, but that Excel spreadsheet having the logic, the calculations already built in, makes it a really solid tool for AI to use because it is picking up a piece that it's bad at. And so if AI can interface with that tool, just like we plug tools together, it makes it stronger. And you can take that same pattern and plug it into your software systems too.
I think that's one of the amazing use cases for our audience. If you're just trying to think of like, how do I use AI? Because I know so many people are doing it. Um, AI's ability to take a PDF and to get the data out of the PDF and get it into usable Excel format, it's pretty wicked awesome. And especially if the Excel sheet already has some type of key information in regards to, okay, these are the pack styles or whatever the cases are, these are the commodity groups, and it can reference those in the PDF, like boom. It can do some pretty incredible things on its own with. So I love this that um, what other so you talked about, yeah, replacing some of these manual workflows that exists, that it's one of the easiest use cases. Do you have examples of others that are great highlights that it's just like, yeah, this was an immediate win because we got somebody out of doing a very menial, stupid task that they could have used their time to do something else?
I have a bunch. There's always fun ones. Um, I'll take one with your PDF example and walk through. We helped a fabrication company that would get very large PDFs from manufacturers. Say somebody would send them a 300 or 400 page PDF with design information. They needed to quote. There was a large number of smaller complex tasks that someone had to go through, and it would take them 3 or 4 weeks to get through all that. We came in, helped identify the process, figure out those pieces. In about 6, 7 weeks of development time, we built a tool that allowed them to take that turnaround time from 3 or 4 weeks to a day and a half with with pretty good accuracy. I'm not saying 100%. We had someone who had to go in and review it, make sure it's all correct. But you can chain those small decisions together, those small tasks, and automate them all. So these PDFs would come in to an email, the AI would grab it, process it. It may take 2 or 3 hours to process. And then someone would come in and review, call out any misses, it may do any fixes and continue forward. Huge time saver for the company. And ultimately, it was all areas that were pretty routine for them. And those are the best spots to start. You can get immediate effectiveness. You have a lower risk of it being really confusing, and you can quickly track the usage and make sure you're hitting the mark.
I think back even the same example, just for our audience that, especially in accounting and finance, that, um, we would work with packing houses, right? And they had charge structures by individual boxes packed based upon, how much weight and how many different bags, et cetera, of particular commodity went into a box. And we had accountants that their number one job was to take those incoming invoices from the packers, and on behalf of our grower base was to take those invoices and compare them against what we actually inventoried in our ERP to make sure that the two match, that ultimately that we had verified that they said that they packed this and this is what they're charging us versus what our system said actually got packed, and what they should charge us. And we even had like a rate sheet and everything, like, but it was somebody's job. And it literally would take about a day and a half, 2 days of their job just going through invoices and doing this every week and matching things. And it's like, this is a perfect use case for AI, that if you already have a rate sheet with the relevant rates and you can access your system and you get an incoming invoice, like, AI could totally take over all of that and just match all of that and identify the discrepancies for you because it's looking for the data points. Like, it's not a mathematical function. It's just looking for matches. Like, hey, does this match that? What's the discrepancy, et cetera? And just feels like such a good use case. But again, very manual, person intensive activity that is already existing. And I think, what would you say? Because like, I've found this to where people are trying to think of, man, if I used AI in all these like really big strategic ways, we could create differentiation points. You seem to be bringing it back down to a more relative level of like, let's figure out how to automate things. What would you say to the business owner that says, but I really want to figure out, like, what are the things that we're not even looking at today? How do we use AI for that stuff? Like, how can we potentially look at new business segments that we should be entering or new markets? Like, what would you say to them in regards to all that?
So I'm gonna take your question and kind of rephrase it, because ultimately what I'm hearing is, hey, cool, I can definitely see it doing the blocking and tackling at the company. Makes sense. I see the wins. I also want to use it to see if there's additional product lines that are similar to what we're doing today in different markets that we might be able to break into.
Yeah, or even other strategic things that are not, how do I say, non like super repetitive, like big idea stuff that doesn't happen very often.
On the strategic level, it's similar to the blocking and tackling, though, at the end of the day. Okay, great. So you have other areas that you may want to research and identify. Is it what we do going to be a good fit, or can we change a few things and be a good fit there? We're going to divide and conquer that question. What markets could that be? Okay, here's a list, and you can have AI generate that list for you. And what are the steps that we need to go field that list and to check? And so as you start to divide and conquer that down, that's how you end up identifying it with AI. It can help, but you have to help give it guidance. I don't know if that kind of hits your question.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I think it's still just this idea that I think if people are looking for AI to create something amazing for them in their business model or create something super differentiated, that it's still about breaking down into segmented tasks that AI can help you with, whether on an automation or some type of thinking, but it's not going to be this explosive. All of a sudden, you have a new idea, you have something new and amazing in your business today that it really is breaking it down into fragmented little pieces and figuring out how do I improve this little part here? How do I improve this little part here? That's kind of what I'm getting at of what you're saying.
So yes, to a degree, but the other piece around it is understanding what you're asking the AI to a level where you can actually describe it, if that makes sense. Hey, magic my business and figure out how to help me double my revenue. That's a really big question. And so there are some AI pieces that can help, and it'll ask you questions, but it's ultimately helping you funnel down into something much more tactical and actionable, or breaking down that logic. I think that's, if I think about people's expectation around AI, it's that they can answer that big question reasonably without getting a whole lot more in depth. And just like person, it can't. It needs all that information about your company, and then it can start to make some better recommendations. Maybe.
I think the big debate for a lot of food and ag business owners is they're trying to figure out, where do I start with like really using AI at scale? Because a lot of people, like, yeah, you can use it as a personal level. Like, yeah, I used it to help me create a job description yesterday, right? Even today, I was editing it, and so it's like I can use it in these little individual use cases. But I think more so, how to use it at an enterprise level, that your people are regularly using it to be more efficient in what they're doing. And, it's not just like random use cases like, hey, I happen to write a job description and I get to use Claude Chat, for this right now. That, um, I guess more so I'll hone in on the question, Ryan, that, you know, I think people are trying to figure out how to use it, but one of the big things that's popping up is it all about the tools? Like there's all these new tools coming in the marketplace, that there's Claude, there's ChatGPT, Google Gemini, and they're all progressing at their little intervals, that one's now better than the other, and the other is going to come out with a new upgrade, and then boom, 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 and it's all layering on top of each other. But is it really a tools game? Like, is that where we should be playing, focusing our attention?
And the tools are great. Don't get me wrong. And they're doing a lot, and they're doing a lot more every day. So from a business owner's approach, from actually looking at it, you don't want to tie into one tool, because GPT may be perfect for what you're doing in one area, but Claude may be perfect in the other. So the question becomes, how do you architect and design your environment to where you can switch those underlying LLMs as you need to? And having that ability on a very specific smaller use case level gets really powerful as you progress forward. And there's a lot of reasons around maintainability, repeatability, etc., token cost, environment costs to help strengthen that. But understanding that I don't need to pick just one LLM. I want to set up an environment that will route to the right one when I need it is critical.
There's a big data component to that. I don't mean to use the word big data. I hate using that word or that phrase, but there is a very significant data component to that. Like I said, I have found that food and ag businesses harness so much data that they probably are fully unaware of, that just, because from a food safety, even traceability standpoint, like you have to, what a lot of US consumers don't understand is you can trace a single peach back all the way to the little 10 acre, block that it came from on a ranch and what day it was harvested and what time and potentially even who harvested it. The traceability gets down to that level because there's data collection points throughout all that. There's just so much data running throughout, the food and ag industry, for those reasons. They have it in a bunch of different silo systems, right? That you have food safety data over here, you have your ERP, your accounting system over here. You have it in all these different segmented areas. And how do you go about like trying to tap all that, trying to access that data? Like, what should companies be thinking about setting up to try to make that more efficient than I got to access my ERP over here for this little piece. I got to get this lit thing over here. Like, what would you suggest to them?
The data aspect on around AI ends up being incredibly critical. If you can provide AI clean data on repeat, structured properly, you're going to increase the predictability. We've all used ChatGPT or Claude or anything else, and it has that regenerate button in the bottom. You click it, you get a very different answer. Maybe this one's better. Really powerful if I'm using it. If it's automated, bad. And so that's the piece. We can't regenerate if we're automation. And so we need predictability out of that. And so there's a lot of places where the data is the big component on getting that predictability because we can lock in the prompts, we can lock in some of the steps, but having clean data is critical. And then if your data is spread out across multiple different systems, which most companies are, there's a section where you can start to consolidate that information, get it associated, and provide that to AI. And that's been a very winning pattern for a number of reasons. If you're familiar with the concept of a data warehouse or a data lake, that's the place to start. And your data starts to flow into there. You can have better security, better permissions, and make sure it's structured and clean. So as you feed to the AI, you get predictable results across the board.
I think about it that again, coming back to examples like we would have to trace things down to a grower block level, where we'd actually have a grower block ID that was related to the variety of the commodity, where it came from, which ranch, which block, and even had data as to regards to picking date, et cetera. But the grower block ID, like there was a standard part of it that existed in every system. We had it in a food safety system over here. We had it in a quality control, like just, hey, how did this fruit actually pack out in terms of grade system over here, which was different than is this food safe over here? We had it in our grower accounting system over here. But the one key of all of it was you had all these disparate pieces of information. You'd have grower returns and cost over here. You'd have food safety data. You'd have quality control data. And every grower just wanted to have like visibility in regards to, can I have this in a summary snapshot as to what the heck happened with my fruit? Like what in the world was going on? But the problem was, is it was living all these different parts. And you're talking about building a data warehouse or a data lake where all of those things can synthesize together and you can have that key of that grower block and say, okay, you have a table over here of all this food safety data. You have a table over here of all this grower cost and revenue data. And now we can pull all this together and potentially create a nice report for you that says this is what's happening as a whole. And it's not going to take somebody 10 hours to piece all the information together from all those disparate systems, but you can pull it out of one warehouse where all those things are feeding into. Am I right in saying that?
You nailed it. And I love the example with the key across all of them. Here's the association, because that's an important piece of that data model, because that shows how those systems relate to each other. And you can and train that into the AI so it understands that relationship, because otherwise it can get it wrong.
And I think, I mean, for our audience, like I'm kind of geeking out on this with Ryan a bit because there's an element like in the finance side, right? We do have access to a lot of the data. And so I've gone throughout projects with some of our clients in past career before I started my business that, yeah, like I can't underemphasize the importance of having quality data because that's the problem is that, like I mentioned, you have the key there. You had a grower block ID that was associated, that was the same and associated with all these different pieces. If you didn't have that, you could have information living in the ERP, get it into a data warehouse. But if you don't have that data associated, like the AI would be taking guesses at, okay, this revenue and this cost data, the grower block ID sits over there in the quality control data silo. Its information is now in the data warehouse, but somehow the key could be different to the revenue and the cost data. And if it is, and there's no map for the AI to understand that, you could have havoc. Like the AI will not know that that revenue and cost data is related to that grower, as an example. And so this is kind of what we're talking about for the audience of like from learned experience, right, Ryan? That like some of this data architecture and thought in regards to how you're structuring things and how you're getting data in, but even then, how is the data mapped? How is it structured? How is it linked together? Um, that's when you can create really cool results from it, but you still got to do the hard lift work of getting to that point. And that's a very relevant step. Am I right in saying that?
Absolutely. Getting that foundational clean data section in there is critical if you want AI to be predictable. And so while your team is just dragging and dropping files, those pieces, there's you don't necessarily need it there, but as soon as you start to do integration, as soon as you start to have it take steps, add agents, you're going to want that clean data layer in place.
Walk us through though, because for some business owners listening, this may be totally unfamiliar to them. Like this is the first time that they've ever heard of this, and their eyes could be glazed over and like their head could be spinning like, wait, I just got a new ERP that was supposed to be my saving grace, and now I got to get a data warehouse. Like, wow, you know, um, walk us through like what's the real like costs? What are the considerations to go about setting up this data architecture correctly? What should they be considering?
The first ones you want to start to look at is understanding it's not necessarily going to be cheap. The data warehouses are you'll normally spend between 5,000, maybe 10, 15 for larger data sources, depending on the data, the complexity, all the fun pieces around that. So you just not want to just hop into, but you don't need all of your data phase one either. You want your key areas, your high return data sources first. So what that may be your CRM, it might be your financial system, could be inventory, could be your ERP, depending on what you have out there. But when you start to look at your data warehouse, it's identifying we want to use it for these business goals. You're not building it just to build tech. You're building it because, hey, I have a big win from an AI initiative over here. I can save a lot of money, or I can speed these pieces up, and this is worth the spend through the data warehouse, through the data lake setup to get to there. So you want to have those endpoints more or less identified. You will find as you get those first few built out, they're foundational pieces, so the price drops. So those first big wins will get you across the board, and then you'll start to see many other wins and opportunities from having that tech already in place, if that all kind of makes sense.
You know, I think for the food and ag community in this, that realizing that, yeah, these are some fixed costs that you're going to have to, invest in up front. There's a reality though of, I already see it coming. I mean, we're recording this in May 2026, but with what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz, and we'll see if a deal gets finalized today. I've read in the news that it should be finalized today. Who knows? But even then, the effects of this are going to be so critical for a long time to come. Like, I think people underestimate how many fertilizer inputs that go into growing crops come straight out of the Strait of Hormuz. Like, how many fertilizer inputs come in the United States and are imported in order to apply into the ground. And so costs are just going to be skyrocketing. And the idea is like, it's not about eliminating team members, but it's about using your labor effectively. Like control what you can. You can't control that as a farmer or, an ag operator, that fuel prices sometimes are not in your control. Weather's not in your control, but what can you begin to hone in on that you can make more effective yourself? And this is one of those pieces that if you can standardize, do it. So you talked a bit about the cost it takes. What's the time it takes to get this set up? Like once somebody starts this initiative of trying to create a data warehouse, like how long should this take?
The answer depends. It's the right answer, but it's the one no one actually wants. But you can see data warehouse and those early data sources get plugged in pretty quickly. So we've had initiatives with clients where we were able to plug in a couple of data sources and get some AI stuff built out within 6 to 7 weeks. So the big takeaway for most people is that's not a huge amount of time. That's within the same quarter. We're not talking a year and then you start to see effectiveness. Watch for small deliverables, quick ones that you can start to use with the team. And that will start to build up that foundation much quicker.
So to that point, we've kind of talked about cost, we're talking about time. And a lot of this is revolved around the data infrastructure, but From experience, you know, like, especially with a growing organization, sometimes this is easier with less people, but certain processes can touch multiple departments and even like third party vendors, et cetera. And so to change and to automate something, it could be a lot more than just, okay, we're going to throw AI on top of this. Like, you're going to have to get everybody on board and make sure that everybody's aware of the change and coordinating all this. And um, so, what would you say to organizations in regards to what are the roles of people that are needed to be really successful with helping to roll out AI initiatives inside their organization?
I see a lot of organizations that want everyone to have AI. So I talked to one company owner, and they really wanted every department to have their own agent in the next quarter, and was dead set on it. And I like the approach. He's wanting to get everyone familiar with the new technology to figure out where it plugs in. But running a lot of stuff at the same time gets really messy really fast. And so one of the patterns we see that works significantly well is having an AI leader at your company. It doesn't have to be their only job. They don't even have to be terribly technically inclined for it. They're driving, we want AI for these reasons, these business goals. I'm expecting these metrics. Let's see how to get there. And then technology is helping them achieve that. And so they're helping identify the initiatives. That helps on prioritization. That helps make sure the team is all aligned on how do we get there? What is that going to look like? And it helps make sure we're not biting off a lot more than the team can chew.
You and I have talked about this because I think some organizations, as especially they give this power to the team members, or they kind of pick some of the people that should be involved to lead some initiatives. Their first thought is to pick the biggest techie in the room, like the person that loves experimenting with AI and the person that's very techie. What might go wrong about that?
I love seeing the new LLM or checking out the new tool and can it help hit this? And maybe it's more efficient. It can be really easy for someone who's technical to get wrapped around the axle on a 3 or 4% improvement and wanting to slow everything down to retrofit or change this piece. The business goals are the objective. And so making sure we're making progress towards that, we're not getting new tool, new shiny syndrome to move pieces around helps tremendously. And the technical person will also be much more in the weeds. And so it can really help to have someone who is more higher level watching it. We're stopped on this for a while. Is there a different answer than the one you're looking at? How can we route around it? Can really help make sure that you're continuing that forward progress, if that makes sense. So the tech people will come because there's new technology, there's AI, they're excited about it, but making sure you have that business driver in the mix will help make sure you hit your goals.
A big part of all of this, though, too, is a lot of companies need to be thinking about. I mean, you've summarized for us, it's not a tool game. It's a lot about proper data architecture. And uh, the best use cases is to to automate some of the manual tasks that are existing today. That, some of the synthesis of getting data over here into other silos, et cetera, and having to, move data between all those manual activities that automate those things with AI. You've given us some clear use cases that, yeah, it's not great at math, but in terms of getting data into logic based tools it can definitely do and help, create some functionality. Um, to all this, though, even if you have that champion that may not necessarily be or is the right person that can help lead initiatives in an organization, data security is a concern, right? That I mean, Claude doesn't feel very data secure, safe, and for a lot of, I just know in the food and ag community that everybody keeps their cards pretty close to their chest, right? That I. I just you do not want anything about your proprietary data, even if it's not that highly proprietary. It just the how do I say the differentiators out there of you got a bunch of people growing a similar commodity, your differentiation level isn't that significant, but still took you 20 years to build. And so you don't want to give anybody a leg up that you don't have to and get them access to your data that shouldn't have it. All that said, I'm kind of building the case here for data security is important. How do you make sure that your data is safe? Like you put it into a data warehouse. How do you make sure that when you're giving somebody access to the data warehouse and AI tools, whatever those may be, Claude, Gemini, who cares? How do you make sure that they're handling it safe?
One of the key areas around AI is there's two times you want to help protect that data. What data do you want to train the AI with? And then how do you protect the data that you're feeding it in real time as people use it? and each one has its own challenges. Training the data is very powerful. Our general recommendation is to train it over processes and industry information, but nothing proprietary, nothing secret, no PII, anything around those areas. And the goal around that, it gets it familiar with your company, how you approach the industry, but it doesn't have any secrets there. And we do that for a few reasons. If you train something into the AI, really powerful, it has access to it, but people can ask it questions to get the information. There were some wonderful horror stories early on as people rolled out Copilot. Copilot's very powerful. It ingested all the documentation, the Word docs, the Excel sheets across the organization, trained it AI, and people could ask questions about it. Really great until someone realized it ingested a HR spreadsheet that had everyone's compensation. And now people can get that in the AI. You can tell the AI to have controls and protect it, and that sends information, but AI is very, very easy to fool. Very easy to fool. They call it adversarial attacks. You can check them out. They're a lot of fun, but you can fool it. So if the information is in the AI, it can potentially leak out. And so the way you protect against that, you don't train that information into the AI. You provide it in real time. And that's where we focused up around it. And so providing it in real time goes back to data warehouse, data cleanliness, because if Bob is saying, hey, I need this information to do this, and we can programmatically provide that to the AI as part of his request, we can check permissions, we can go to the right data, make sure it's fresh data, pull that information in, and then provide it into the AI. And because it's integrated into the AI, we've sort of already have checked the security around it, the permissions, the configuration. It won't be used external. It's going to the right one for this purpose. All that information can be plugged into the process itself, which means your team member's not deciding it. So they will follow the process and the policies to the letter because it's built out and it's the easy way for them to get there. If all that kind of makes sense.
Yeah. So, two kind of points there. Don't train your AI on proprietary data itself. Um, Train on other data. But then when you actually need to use any secure or proprietary data, I should say, make sure that in your data warehouse, you have data security and permission set that people can only access particular things that they should have access to. And so when they pull the data and use it in the AI that has not been trained on that proprietary data, that they're just grabbing data that is, that they would have access to and that couldn't be sent into that model, then all of a sudden be made available for everybody else.
You got it. Exactly.
Cool. Awesome. Great. Well, Ryan, I so appreciate this because I know we could go on, about this and, we probably need to just have a data security episode because that's, I think for me is like one of the big question marks. And I think for a lot of companies, it's still like cybersecurity is a real issue. And so making sure that, using tools like Claude and ChatGPT, a lot of people are having a lot of fun with these tools, but I think that there's a lot of sentiment or a lot of hesitation from a lot of people, especially in the food and ag community. Again, community that keeps their cards close to their chests that just, hey, you put too much in that thing. You have people in the Bay Area that don't give a crap about food and ag and, and what would happen to us if all of a sudden our data was leaked. Right. And so, I almost want to just have a separate episode where we just deep dive on that and geek out. So I'm going to have to bring you on for that, but, I appreciate you, Ryan, because like I said earlier, that you built the use case of really going after very repetitive manual tasks, that those things can be automated, considerations and what it takes to really build out an appropriate data architecture and why. And I love that because I think for a lot of businesses that they're trying to think, how do I get it out of just, hey, I have one guy over there that's experimenting on how to use AI and drafting a sales pitch, that he can send via email multiple times over really easy. And how do I really get high ROI business use case that's not that little independent little silo over there, but I'm really achieving things within my company. And so you gave us great use cases. For our audience, where can they learn more about you, Ryan? How can they get to know about you?
So you can hit our company website, terractechnology.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn. Please reach out and connect. If you're curious on what AI can do for your company, we do offer a free hour consultation of kind of diving through your company and where it can help. And happy to meet you guys and dive into it. Be a lot of fun.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate you, brother.
Thank you, Mason. It's fun to be here.
All right. See you, everybody. Till next time.